Hey, what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and we are back again for episode 8 now, which I just had to ask Sneak about because I wasn't sure which number we were on. But we are back with another episode here of the CoD Pod, as always, with me as my favored co-host, and more or less probably only consistent co-host, which has been great to have thus far. We got our guy, Mr. Sneak. Mr. Sneaky, how we doing?
I am good, man. It's been a very exciting day. Just come off a 4-hour stream, so hopefully we're going to get some of the guys from the channel coming in and joining in the podcast, which is going to be really fun. So any questions, come in chat. I'm going to try and answer them throughout the podcast as well.
Oh yeah, man, as always. And again, hopefully we'll have some moments here where we can be a little interactive, or at least as much as possible. I have to keep the chat window open. That's probably what I should do, which will be a lot better for us. And world Bruce praised. That's great. So we got a few things we want to talk about today. One, obviously, we want to talk about the patch notes for 1.0.16, along with something interesting that you and I were just touching on a bit, which is some of the migration impact. And obviously with SS1-2, specifically going through their first migration, and SS1-3 just finished theirs, and we got SS1-4 that's going to be coming up next. There's some interesting things that happen, and you obviously have a little bit more insight because you play a main account on one of those kingdoms. But before we even get there, let's touch on the update. Now, obviously in 0.16, there's a healthy, let's say that, amount of changes and things that are coming our way to COD. And it is very interesting because, again, I covered this, you covered this. And so let me just start with you. Again, let's kind of do, what do you like about the update? Give me just 2 or 3 things that you like about the update that you think are hopefully going to be good directions that the game's going to go in.
Well, one of them straight away was the reduced difficulty in the Crucible Courage. Like, that's been one thing every player has been screaming for, which is really good to see. So, like, I'm happy at the fact that, you know, the players have put feedback in the Discord telling, you know, the devs, like, look at this. This is, like, ridiculous. We were going against a raid boss for a head, and then now they've realised it's a little bit too difficult, so they've hopefully tweak the end game or later, you know, levels of that event. That's a really good change I like, since it's not, even though it might not be a big change, it's more of, you know, it's a change that the devs are showcasing, like, look, we are willing to work with you and listen, which is really good. And obviously for me, it's like my biggest thing is the 2 legendary heroes, for obvious reasons, right? Those 2 legendary heroes come in, and they look amazing. Can we just say, like, the picture the Call of Dragons guys have put out on the official page? Amazing. We were talking about it on stream, which was really cool, with the chat. We were always wondering if basically how strong this Syndrion guy is going to be, or I don't know how we're going to call him, but I think it's Syndrion. He's a marksman, rally, and precision. So a lot of the debate about that hero was all about, is he actually going to have almost like 4 PvP talents and then have the rally tree, or are they going to go with the generic 3 skills and then like one of them is a rally dedicated, you know, like
like Hosk.
And they were saying, so they were saying if he's got a dedicated rally skill, they're actually going to feel like he might still be strong, but because he has that rally skill, it's going to impact his, you know, actual meta shifting, hopefully, you know, defining role. So we'll soon see when that comes in. And obviously we've got the 2 new artifacts, so I like all the new things, as you can tell. But the last thing that I think you'll probably like as well, or I think was the most actually like interesting thing that caught me off guard, were the talent change to Garrison and Rally. The fact that you can now say, I want a fair offense or fair defense, and force your opponent into not using their skill 1 for so many seconds, or maybe for the duration of the fight. I've not understood exactly maybe how this talent works, but it's such a cool like concept that you can like, okay, I know you have maybe a better skill 1, but maybe my match is better pound for pound, like hit for hit, better than yours. But because of the debuffs that you know bring to the table, I can disable that. So I'm really interested in as well that aspect. So that's like the 3 points so far in Match of the Month thing that I've been really loving and it's caught my attention the most so far.
Okay. Okay. I mean, solid, man. Solid. I think for me, I will go with the things that I like. Obviously, I'm always big on quality of life things, and I like the alliance change that's coming. One of those specifically being able to see the daily changes in member power on the personal rankings, and with the merit changes as well. More so on the power, really, than the merits. I think let me say this. I think the merits are good if you're talking season 2. Right, or season 1 plus, or as we can just call it, the merged kingdom. Right, I think that is where the merit rankings are going to be a lot better because it'll be able to show you, and we don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to be a plus minus thing where it'll show you what the week before was on Monday, and then what's the plus minus change for the next week on Monday? Will it be a daily change? Like, we don't really know how intricate it's going to be, but I do like the idea of having some way to gauge more so of your PvP activity without having to do as much data input, where you'd have to go in the spreadsheet and do it on Monday and then do it the next day and cap it. I mean, maybe you'll still do that, but at least you'll be able to see what the plus minus gains are, or at least I hope, right? And again, we don't know how it's going to be, but I just think having that there can help a little bit when it comes to when you're kind of all out fighting, and you could see however those changes will be presented. And I think with the member power, I think that will help a little bit more, if not a lot, when it comes to season 1 and continuously, because then you'll be able to gauge, at least use that as a factor to talk about general player activity. On, well, hey, these players have only gained 1,000 power in 3 days. Okay, well, they're probably not that active, and they haven't posted that they're going to be away. They haven't posted in some type of a time off group chat. So, right, that makes it a little bit more easy to say, okay, well, we'll remove these players. We'll just message them and let them know, and then, or you see people that are gaining tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of power over days or over a week. So I just like that it's a little bit more hands on now. You're seeing alliances get a little bit more utility and being able to have more support for the way that they're being managed and the way that you're gauging activity. And that was obviously something that a lot of people from the community really wanted to see too as well, that we saw not only from the dev feedback column, but also for a lot of suggestions that were coming around that time. And then I guess the last one for me would most likely have to be I think it's this collision one that I like.
Yeah.
Which is where they're disabling the intercept mode and the pass modes, and they're adding collision between legions. So it's what it says: non-friendly legions will collide with each other when not in battle, making it impossible for them to pass through each other. The reason I kind of like this is because, one, I do kind of feel like it's a little bit more realistic, and then two, I like the idea that you could actually block off choke points with this mechanic now, once it does come in. Because there's fights where you'll see them going through a choke point on a zone 3, right? If you're building from the northwest, you have to come down that bridge and then kind of go through that choke point if you want to go southwest around the corner, around that southern mountain range in Atherin. And so, like, that's an example of where you could put 5 or 6 units, and again, obviously they're not going to last forever, but if you have enough units, you could almost kind of form a wall, if you will, right? Where they can't go through. You can even use that to cut people off and block them from retreating. If you have people that are already deeper, you could almost use that as a way to buy yourself time or delay for other units to catch up. So I think there's multiple uses for it, and I guess I just like the idea that they're going a little bit more realistic. We'll have to see how it plays out and how the data, looks as well from a few. But I like the concept, at least behind them testing something that doesn't seem incredibly harmful to the game or really at all, but it could be interesting in how it plays out. And then I think that just tied in with the intercept mode and the pass mode options. I mean, my feeling on, really how I'd like to see PvP, which is that my view is that no unit should be attacking unless that unit is clicked on and then starts attacking, and that's how I'm always going to feel about that. So
Yeah, the way I like it, the whole thing they've done. The way they've done it is they've basically like put intercept mode into the game without you having to physically click it, and like the only way physically intercept triggers where combat occurs is if you were red nameplate, meaning
Yeah.
you are aggressive, which makes sense. So then, if there's just two whites that are crossing paths, then it's gonna just like hit each other, or they might maybe maneuver around each other, right? And they might just walk around each other instead.
Yeah.
But I do like it, like you said, you know, to me, it gives infantry again more of a defining role. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like my job is to be front line for the back. So it's like I can now sit here, purposely block this area with all my infantry, and let my mages and archer players have free reign, unless obviously they get caught out by the flying unit or some sort, you know. But it's really good that you can see them adding dynamic play, and I think the more you're actually seeing it, a really good description was actually Chisgul, because Chisgul said he feels like sometimes you're playing a MOBA, and I was like, that's literally how I feel like when I'm playing it. You are almost playing like a MOBA. You've got these marches that you're micromanaging completely different to Rock, but then you've got this artifact that's almost like an ultimate ability that you're trying to use as a time window and benefit from. So it's a really good concept that I think they're slowly adding on. So really like that change as well. I think it's one of the better changes they've added in the patch.
No, and I think to your point, I think one thing that comes to mind to me, right, is something that we usually see in open field fights, which you'll often see Cav trying to flank, whether that's for archers or single units that are kind of just poking or sticking out a little bit overextended. And to your point about the infantry being able to maneuver, right, that's something that they can now do a little bit more. Or you can even have Cav on Cav, right, that the Cav stops another Cav unit from immediately going forward. They have to go around that unit if they collide. Same thing with infantry. You could almost put like a little wall up around your archers or your DPS, right? Which is usually something you see, again, in League and in other MOBA games where you're kind of trying to protect your DPS a little bit more so they can sustain throughout a fight, so they can output as much damage as possible. So I almost wonder if those things will become, just maybe little instances or little scenarios that we'll see play out because of it.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, now let's talk about maybe some of your dislikes, or maybe just some things that you question. Right? Is there even better? Is there just anything you're on the fence about? Okay, no, hit me with it. Okay, because I have one or two. So okay, go.
The number one. Why are you limiting how I level?
Bro,
That's the best way of putting it. Why are you limiting the way players to level the game? I find it absolutely ridiculous. The fact that a player now has to fight PvP combat to get from level 50 plus, and the way, which is more mind-boggling to me, right? And I think you would now even understand it. So imagine you're playing a new character, it's level 1. We farm or do whatever we do to level 20 or 30, right? But what if we get into a small fight? So we get into a small fight now, and we might have just gone from level 30 to 35. So we've used 5 levels now. So when we hit 5th there, does that mean I still get to go to 55 with farming? Or does that mean I'm still locked at 50?
I see what you mean.
If that's the case, I have to now mid-max my leveling to be as much into, farming and using XP bucks to then make sure the last little punch is all PvP based. So
Yeah.
I really hate how they've done that, and I just dislike generally the whole XP change. Even the fact that epic heroes now only have 5 stars while legendaries have 6 stars makes no sense to me. They both should have 6 stars abilities.
Yeah.
Why are you making a clear differential between epics and legendaries? There already is one.
What's funny is, so that's how it was. If you remember, before the update they did where they reduced the stars for Season 1, before you then got the stars unlocked in the future season, that's how it was when we were in beta. It's just everyone had 6.
It was just, why are you making it 5 and 6? Just everyone have 6, because then it makes sense, right?
No.
So it's a really wild thing to me that the devs are changing star levels on heroes and making a bigger difference and differential between epics and legendaries. It makes no sense. And the fact that they're limiting players on how you should be able to level up in the game is just beyond crazy to me. If anything, like I said, they should be adding new ways to gain XP. We've got engineering heroes. Why can't engineering heroes get XP for building roads, building flags, destroying flags? We've got gathering heroes that are able to do gathering tasks and gain XP. You're limiting ways to gain XP, but you're not expanding on the current heroes you've got. It's just so crazy to me. So as you can tell, I hate that. That point is so backwards.
No, I mean, listen, no, I'm definitely so. Above all else, again, if I had to check above all for everything you said, I effortlessly would. I think the gathering point is pretty spot on, right? If you're getting EXP for gathering, why aren't you getting EXP for some of those other areas? Especially because, I mean, if you think about when you're starting out in the beginning with an alliance, one of the challenges often is getting people to show up to build. Not only for flags, for forts, for roads, you know, you don't usually see I mean, you have more people that show up on a regular basis, probably to do a behemoth, than you're going to get that same amount of people consistently over every single flag that you're going to build a flag. So why not incentivize more participation within an alliance by allowing for you to get EXP from building? Now, you could maybe make the argument that, okay, if you want to do that, maybe, you know, then you have to kind of debate on, okay, well, is it going to be the same amount of XP that you'll get for gathering? Would it be a little bit less if you're building? Would they proportion it? Right? However they do that, I still think it's a good point. I still think it's something worth trying. And then, yeah, I mean, again, the level 60 thing for me is just is beyond ridiculous, and that's just saying it nicely. Did you notice how, if you're reading the change in 2, where it's new season, new experiences, and you scroll down about a little more than halfway, and it talks about the changes they're making to the way the heroes gain EXP with the talents Earth's Grace, and
I don't know exactly what the percentage changes.
with you. Yeah. So listen, if you read it, read both lines, and it says when a legion finishes gathering resources. The other one says when a legion finishes gathering resources, and then they updated it. So the one that they put out 13 hours ago actually has text wording changes, because I that was something I pointed to. They were basically the same thing. The only difference was one of them said 0.4 up to 2% or 2%, and the other one said just 2% flat. It was super funny, right? But now you see there is a difference, right? Now it says the hero, right? Before it was the hero receives EXP equal to. And then after it's the gathering hero receives, right? And that was something they touched on. So now it's only... Exactly. So now it's only because before, like, even if you gather now, you may, and you've noticed this as much as others have, which is when you gather with a gathering hero, if you have a non-gathering hero as your secondary, sometimes the secondary will get the EXP, and sometimes they won't. And so now it feels like they're changing it completely to where only the gathering hero will get the EXP and no one else will. So, you know, basically kind of limiting your opportunity. Yeah, so it's just... but to your point, it feels to me, and this is something that I talked about in the video I did, which is that it seems like they're trying to slow down the progression a bit, like the development of account progression, by doing some of these changes. And even more, like, just talking about the fact that they're limiting the stars, right? I mean, think about how many epic purple commanders are used regularly in PvP and Rock. Right, you don't see epic commanders in Rock becoming obsolete, and this is interesting to me because now it gives me the impression, well, because the way I look is like this: if you're going to change it like that, clearly you're nerfing the epic heroes a bit by removing a star from them. And if that's the case, are you now going to go in a direction where you're going to pump out more legendary heroes than you are epics? Are you going to not pump out any more epics and only do legendaries? Because, I mean, it could end up being pretty disparaging, the difference. And obviously we won't know until it happens. But part of me wonders if by doing this change, will players going forward now not care to level epic heroes for PvP? Will they only focus on legendaries because they know they won't be able to get that 6-star? Does the 6-star not really matter to them at the end of the day? Because if you just generally think about how long it takes to max out a hero anyways throughout a season, it's just...
Yeah, no, I still think it does. The thing is, you got to remember, so the difference in Rock, right, if it was the same system as Rock, I could get behind it, right? Because it was like, if I think, is it in Rock where if you go up to the extra stars, that's when you get extra talent points, right? So
Yeah.
you're able to unlock more stuff, which makes that's fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, for an epic being 5 stars, that makes sense, but again, being 5 stars, it wouldn't harm them if it was only extra talent points, because they could be the death of you, right?
Yeah.
So you could still have a reason to do that. But the fact that the 5th star is a PvP increment, and the 6th star is also a PvP increment, that's the problem. It's the fact that each star is giving you either one of them is giving you physical attack against the target, and then the other one's giving you some sort of damage reduction.
Yeah.
So it's like you're losing out on some sort of PvP stat which matters. So it's like it's crazy to me that they're not allowing, like I say, like epics to have it, because you should be able to have those stats on those commanders to make it as fair as possible. So maybe they go back on it, or well, I say go back, maybe they just be like, look, we messed up, here's 6 stars, and they give everyone like a bunch of stars, just to level up 0 to 6 stars. It is so crazy how they're trying to create such a big disparity between, because you are right, I think if it gets to that point, I would only probably level up maybe 2 epic commanders, which would be Waldir and Guan, that would be it.
Yeah.
Or maybe Waldir and Craig. Literally, there'd only be 2 epics each season that I'd be leveling up, and that'd be them 2 at a time. So I hope we don't quite do that. But we'll see, guys.
Man, dude, that's the absolute truth. Yeah, it's gonna be our. Okay, how about give me 1 or 2 interesting things? Anything else that you liked that's coming in the update that you think could be impactful in any way at this point? Let's maybe just open it up a bit more. I mean, I think there's 1 or 2 I have, but anything you have outside of what you already mentioned.
Yeah, the last thing for me to the wars patch, which is a bit of an iffy one again for me, is the city themes. Because
Yeah, the skins.
obviously, I love city themes, don't get me wrong. Everyone loves the meta skin, like, super sick. Like, if you don't, you're lying to yourself. I don't care who you are, right?
Yeah.
But the problem which I'm kind of having with this city theme is, I don't mind, obviously, if it's, like difficult, it's a reward-based, power ranking event, that's fine. The only thing I have a problem with is if it's going to have stats. Because if it has stats,
Probably will.
if it has stats, it needs to have almost, like, generic stats and stuff, if that makes sense. So, like, it needs to maybe have, or even if they just say, like, Legion, right?
Yeah.
Just say, like, it's Legion attack or Legion HP, because then...
Or like gathering or peacekeeping.
Yeah, so then at least it gives every, troop type that buff.
Yeah.
They can't bring out a city skin that's like infantry health 15%, because it's like, let's become infantry meta. So they can't do anything crazy like that. So I'm a bit scared, but I'm excited as well, because I kind of say anyone.
Okay, I got a good one for you. Get ready for this. What about the semi-protected passes? I don't know if you read this part that detailed.
Yeah.
So this is interesting to me because they didn't give a lot of detail on it. But what it says new pass mode. Semi-protected passes can only be attacked by alliances who have occupied a behemoth lair within the pass's region, changing the pace at which the map opens up and protecting your affiliated region. So this to me makes it seem like if you're in Kaltia, as an example, and you want to try and get to Nivola, you have to go through Sophrostia. The way I'm reading this is that you would have to capture a behemoth in Sophrostia and then flag all the way up north before you can cap a pass. So it's basically the same system. All they did was just say you have to cap a behemoth now as a prerequisite before you could take the pass, right? Because right now you could flag all the way to the pass and take the pass. But they're saying now you have to at least capture a behemoth. So they essentially added one thing. But the interesting part to me is basically kind of still what 65 did in its like first fight within the kingdom, is basically just having a player's hop from alliances. Like, there's obviously other ways to get to other regions, but by doing it from your own alliance, I mean, again, I don't see this as a super impactful thing. You could basically take it while you're flagging up in that direction. But I guess I'm curious on your thoughts on if, one, because bear in mind, the last update or the second last update was the biggest change thus far to the way that Zone 1 regions operate, where you can now not move your CF, you're limited to where you are, and you basically have to flag out all the way to other Zone 1 regions. This was something that Steelheart, our boy Chad Thunder Broski, ended up saying, and I point out to it because he was one of the big proponents for it early on in the beta, was wanting to see this type of change happen where there wasn't as much fluid movement within Zone 1. So I guess I'm curious, if we're looking at this for new kingdoms, do you like the semi-protected pass change, even though it is a kind of a small prerequisite?
Yeah, I guess, because it obviously means at least everyone gets a, I guess, fair Zone 1.
Okay.
Because the way I looked at the patch, the way I read it, I almost read it as like, so if I was in Frosty and I technically caught these passes now, says to my left or to my right, so Frosty alliances controlled them, and basically the alliances on the other side couldn't get through anymore because obviously I've got control. So for them to fight, they'd have to almost go into like Zone 2 and then push in from Zone 2 into Zone 1 to take over. So it was like a really long detour. So I was like, it makes sense. I like it. Obviously, it's going to be... Some people might not like it, because obviously some people might just want to fight straight away, which is understandable. But at the same time, what people don't realise is, and it's funny when you see it in the comments, you know what I'm going to say, but everyone thinks the game's a sprint. It's not a sprint, it's a nice marathon, it's all about long time pacing, and that's what I try and always keep pushing forward for you guys to learn about. So it's like, it's obviously a good step in the right direction, because again, like, it would have allowed, for example, even in Server 65, if it was implemented, a lot of project alliances technically broke before anything happened, and even in future projects or in future seasons, it means any sort of merge or when the season resets and you go into a new division for the first time, it means at least for the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you might be safe, and you can at least get a good scope of the field of what you're fighting against. So it's a good change. Obviously, we're going to see it implemented, right, and then we're going to see how much of an effect it will have, because, as you know, if anyone's going to learn to abuse it, most likely will be TA. They've been the masters of being able to figure out a patch and work out how to abuse it, so we'll soon see if it's going to be good or if it's not. So.
Oh, excuse me. No, man, listen, I'm with you. And what's interesting to me is, before we transition, one of the things that I always felt was really, really, really curious is that one of the things that the developers came out with early on, right, is kind of talking about how they wanted this game to be a little bit more alliance-focused and not necessarily kingdom-focused. And then you started hearing a lot of people complaining about, and complaining, but more so giving constructive feedback on how it was just too easy for an alliance to run through an entire kingdom in Zone 1 and just kind of do whatever they want. I mean, I think TA is a good example of going from, and you could make the argument TA and gosh, why am I forgetting? Yeah. No. In season 2, I'm forgetting their name right now, which is so bad. They started off in Caltia, and they were like the reason why they factored into the reason why some of the members from Caltia left and went to Forgotten Lands, I believe it was, and then restarted, or Zoland, I think it was, and restarted TN. Forgetting their name, but the situation basically in S2 was where you saw that alliance go from Caltia and go all the way around the map to get to Zoland, which I think they just ended up meeting in Forgotten Lands at that point, from what I remember. But being able to do that, where they just pass hopped all the way around through 5 regions or 4 regions. And so, what's interesting to me, and this is where I'm going with this, is that they came out initially and said we want the game to be a little bit more alliance based. It's clear that they want there was that, and we notice it with parts of updates that are coming out. It's clear that they really want there to be a lot of PvP in the game. Which, why wouldn't they? Because that will drive usually more sales and more money spent, and typically more general investment within the game. So there's small little updates here and there that are always telling us that. But then they come out with this type of an up. But then there's other parts of the updates that will limit how much. And I think it's trying to find that happy medium, right? That nice middle ground of how do we create an environment where you can have as much PvP as you can in a fun way, where people do not feel ostracized or they don't feel isolated in some way, to where they will not go out and do PvP. Right, and this is something I just talked about today in the video I put out for 65, and talking about the DS situation, which was a conversation that I recorded from our diplomacy talks with DS, and this was like one of the focal points. Right, one of the golden questions is, how do you play out a Zone 3 where you can try and have the most amount of activity, the most amount of engagement? How can you have the best and most fun PvP that can last as long as possible, and not just a short 3, 4, 5 day stint, and then you're kind of done at that point, right? To where it's going to be enjoyable, and you can have it go as long as hopefully possible. And I think that's something that this type of a line item in the update really, I don't want to say that I question, but I do wonder. That's where my curiosity is going, is that, it's like they say alliance based, but then they're coming out with things that are limiting the amount of early fighting that can happen. It's almost like they're telling you they want you to have as much fun and as much PvP as you can, but they want to make it challenging early on, but then get easier to do, right? Once you get to Zone 2, once you get to Zone 3, especially, because then you'll kind of have that. But it is interesting that they're doing things that are proactively limiting some of it, while in the same breath also doing things that will allow, right? Or as far as what they're saying, right? Kind of speaking to things. So I don't know, just a very interesting thought. So
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The way I see it with that is kind of, I think Call of Dragons is set up in a very PvP format. So even if the way they set it up now, right, where you can't technically hit anyone, say from any partner in Zone 1s, right, until you're in Zone 2. Even then, what would happen, I can imagine, is like each of these zones are going to have their own alliances, and you got to imagine that these are alliances that aren't projects, right? Just a normal kingdom, just a normal thing to play, all alliances building up. You're going to now imagine it, and this is how I've always seen Call of Dragons. It's almost like it's like Darwin's code, survival of the fittest, and
the Darwinism.
Yeah, like the way it's built is all about survival of the fittest, and even a prime example of it is the bragging rights of all the elite frames, because you only can get one per season, and the fact that they're already showcasing there's going to be a new map, there's going to be new behemoths, meaning these cool frames we've all got at the moment are only going to be limited for so many seasons. So it's like, again, I can imagine Zone 1, everyone's going to fight. You get to get whatever, if you're in the Alliance, I guess the elite grade frame you are. But I feel like the strongest then go into Zone 2, and then it's like they'll go into the strongest fight again, they'll go into Zone 3, because like, ultimately, when you look at everything, the elite dragon is almost a ziggurat at the end of the day, right? From Rock, like it is the end goal for any of Alliance. That's especially in the top 3 power. Like you want ultimate bragging rights. I control the flame dragon. You fight me, I can summon this big ass behemoth on your ass and cook you for breakfast, right? And I've got the sick frame that you don't have because I'm a beast. Like it's just, I think, the way the game's set. So even with the new changes, like you said, and with all that, I think it's still gonna be heavy PvP, but instead of being PvP outwards, it's going to be more like into that makes sense. So if you start in Caltea, it's going to be all the fighting early games going to be happening in Caltea because you're going to be wanting to control whatever behemoths you can, so you can push into zone 2 and be as strong as you can again, and then move forward again. So we'll see how it moves, obviously forward, but that's my say on it. I like it. I don't know. I like the ideology, I guess, of the game.
No, I got you. Okay. No, man, always nice to hear. Always nice to hear a different opinion. That is for sure. All right, let's do this. I know we're coming up now. I think to about a little past 35 minutes. So let's do a little transition. Maybe we'll come back, but I want to talk a bit about migration. And specifically, we were chatting about this just before we started, and I do think there. So I did a video talking about what my general fears are of migration based on the current system that is implemented. Because one, you do not know how many players can join a kingdom before it caps. You also don't have some type of early warning system to let you know before the kingdom gets full. Now, you do have where it says busy, I think it is, or whatever the one is before.
Yeah, it's like
it's active. Yeah. So you do have a color indicator, but there's nothing that says, like an example. It would be cool if they gave you a number and they just showed you how many people were able to join the kingdom. Like we're not even a total number of like how many people are in the kingdom total, but it'd be cool if it just showed you it actually would be cool if it showed you a plus minus. Like if it showed you the number of people that were coming in and the number of people that left. And it doesn't have to give names or anything, but just showing the number would be great because that would also allow for us to kind of gauge, and maybe that number is different each season, depending on how often they open up migration. But just being able to show you that, I think, would be really helpful because the challenge right now is that we don't know what that number is. I mean, is it 50? Is it 150? Is it 300? We don't know what that is. But what's interesting is you have something on this because we were just talking about it for how SS1-2 played out with Kingdoms 1 through 6. And again, and then also the other challenge is that there's no power restrictions. You could have 5 or 10 people that are 100 mil power going from one kingdom to another, right? Like we don't know what the limitations are there, but theoretically that could happen. So I'm curious though, because I thought you brought some really good insight to this when we were talking before, right? So why don't you let us know how did your situation play out with what you saw happening in SS1-2?
Yeah, so it is a weird one because obviously our server is a little bit of an outlier still. We've got six servers to choose from, not 4, but apart from that, yeah, it's a weird one because, like you said, you got the traffic cone, as I say, the traffic light system, and that's the only thing you can work off. So, us in SS1, well, in TA, obviously we were trying to figure out the best way of doing it, right? Obviously, I am not part of the migration planning or all like that. Obviously, they've got their own team. I don't know who's in charge, but shout out to Ghost, Kaden, everyone, Kawaii, everyone there. They might be, sorting out the migration plan, and basically it ended up being on the lines of, obviously, if you guys don't know how migration happens, obviously you get a window. So there's like, it's almost like imagine a transfer window in the Premier League or, the NFL, it's roster time, boys. And during this window, you've got like 3 or 4 days, it were, to obviously migrate. The original plan was obviously to see where people moved because obviously you didn't know any sort of numbers, right? So what we were trying to do was see where almost the randoms would move to, and by doing that you could hopefully see, this kingdom went from green to yellow, then yellow to red, hopefully. And then what ended up happening were obviously they told everyone to wait, and then we would give you, the server. But a lot of players, including myself, just took upon ourselves because I needed obviously videos on it. I migrated myself straight into server 2 anyway, because that's where TA are from. Even if we were going to migrate into say server 6 or server 5, wherever we were going to go, I still had the gems to do it, so I didn't care. But it was the fact that so many people did that already. It was almost like, I don't know. It was the most craziest. I wouldn't say like piranha fest, but you can imagine it. It was just like reset happened, migration started. I migrate into server 2. I feel like everything's normal in life. I fall asleep. 8 hours later, server 2's maxed out. Like, there's no one can join server 2 anymore. Like, and that was the reality. And what were happening were, like, in server 2, they were trying to contact other players that were in server 2, might not been playing as much or all, and trying to get these guys to migrate out so they could get players in. Again, like you say, you don't have an indicator. Like and anyone who's looking in that situation couldn't say, oh, okay, we've made 5 spaces, 5 of you can come. You know, it was one of them things where, and it was honestly disheartening to see where the ending males, where it might have been the final, I don't know, it could be 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 members, I don't even know how many couldn't make it, but it was one of them things where they still haven't been able to migrate, so not in our server now, and out in the main alliance, and they've been told, like, look, hopefully next season, your server will be matched against us again, so then at the end of that season, hopefully, you can migrate back into us. So it's one of them weird situations now where we've obviously got people what we wanted in, but obviously not everyone's there. So it is. I like the migration idea, but like you say, I think there needs a bit more execution to make it work. Like you say, a good indicator would be good, or even if you went to migrate, right, and say it was full. This would, even I was thinking of this kind of like from my old WoW days. It's like, okay, the migration queue the server's full. I could still click migrate and be put into a queue. So it's just like your ticket is number 12. So you've got 11 players in front of you. There, you know, once you get in line, you're in the kingdom. You know, so once you at least you know then, and you can say to your officer like, oh look, I'm in position 13, so at least after 13 players leave your server, I'm going to be able to migrate into, right? And it'd be a really good maybe system they could implement in or something like that, but yeah, it was a really weird time, I would say, for us, but we are at the end of it almost. I think our reset happened, not tomorrow, but yeah, well, tomorrow reset, so we've got think like one day, like 3 hours from now. So we're going to be live streaming it again, so you guys can see that. So it's going to be interesting.
I'll be tuning in on my scout, on all my scouts. But no, it should be good. And I think there's just quite a few valid points there. It's just, and this is why I talk about the idea of having some type of king or queen system, and more specifically just the interface, like those tools that you have for the kingdom, is to me so much better than any type of just common denominator type of approach that the developers can take, because you need autonomy. Like, it's just, the fact is you need it, and you need to be able to say who can come into a kingdom and who cannot come into a kingdom. Only because the ramifications and the probability of that can be so much more impactful than if you don't. And I'll give you a good example. Infinity Kingdom kind of tried to do this thing which was the best of both worlds, right? They did it where you didn't really have a king or queen, like in the traditional sense. You fought over. So they had this thing called the Forbidden Zone in the very middle. It's kind of like Zone 3. And did you play Infinity Kingdom by chance?
No.
Okay. So I'll get this super easy. There's 5 buildings in Zone 3. Once every few weeks, there would be this event. And in the event, it was almost kind of like an MGE or an SLE type of event, where you'd have each day would be a different stage. And then on stage 3 is when the buildings would start opening. Stage 4 is when the center building would open. And you basically, if you captured these, you would gain points. And those points would accumulate every hour. And then in the beginning stages, you would do things like killing PvE units in the middle, right? Or gathering, or training troops, like something that would go towards an accumulative total that you would get points for that would be proportioned based on the stage. And then all those points by the end of this event would add up, and whoever had the most points, and that were over 200,000 or something like that, would win the event. And if you won the event, then your alliance had control of the Forbidden Zone for a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and then it would refresh and you do it all again. And I actually liked this approach. Not to say that I would maybe favor it over everything else, but I liked it because I felt like it found a happy middle ground. It wasn't just, here's the Lost Temple in Rock, you cap it, and then you have it until the next rotation. In IK, they made an event out of it where everyone would participate in a way that was not them fighting over one single structure. And then whoever won that event basically became king or queen for that period of time. So I liked it.
Sorry.
No, go. Yeah, you good.
I was just, it'd be cool if you could do something like that. Like, I could imagine maybe in a season if they did, instead of like the flame dragon, imagine you still had like a big zone and you had like a world boss in there. It was a free roaming world boss. And during an event, it was down to damage. So, like, the most damage dealt by an alliance, like, occupied that area. And if you occupied that area, what I was suggesting, instead of, like, a king or a queen, it can still be, like, almost a democracy, right? So, like, someone who wants to migrate into the kingdom would go through the democracy of obviously, the number one alliance, obviously gets to dictate by controlling the world boss, but you would say, okay, this person's coming in, the R5 and all the officers get to pick green or red, you know? Make it a fair choice, and if it's a, 50-50, it's obviously a no, but if there's a majority 60-40 split or something, then that guy gets, migrated in. So at least it's not just dictated by one person, so then you're not fearing, for example, I don't know, Nefesto, for example, just say, yeah, this guy's in, this guy's in, this guy's in. Nope, you're not, So it could do something like that where, you could do that IK system where you would make like an event world boss in Zone 3 that does appear, and then if you control that world boss, you have rights to the migration at the end of the season or something. It'd be really cool, because obviously it gives you alliance as a reason to fight for that end game reward, right? As well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the way that so IK was a little bit, it was somewhat similar. Like they had power caps at, I think it was like 1 million and like 1.5 and then 2 million or something like that. But my view on it is always having that level of autonomy allows for you to have a higher percentage chance of avoiding the worst case scenario, because currently right now there is no power cap. So you could have, theoretically, you could have a group of spenders or whales that just want to hop from kingdom to kingdom and just cause havoc and just go in and attack everyone. And then the next season they do the same thing. Like, I've seen this in IK, and I'm sure they probably might have some in Rock, but I know at least of 2 groups that were in Infinity Kingdom that every month when the cooldown hit, they would migrate to another kingdom, and they would just make sure that it's healthy, there's a lot of targets, and they would just go nom nom nom. They just go to town, man. Just eat everyone up. And again, I'm not saying that that's going to be something that's going to be widespread. We do have to have some realistic expectations. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that if you do not have a level of autonomy where you can tell someone yes or no, that should not... Think about it like this, right? They talk about that being, and they've said this before, right, kind of being something that they're not looking at. But what you have to understand is that if that person doesn't get into your kingdom, they'll probably get into another kingdom. It's not like they're never going to be accepted by anyone, right? There arguably could be a kingdom for everyone. But my point, right, like, in Infinity Kingdom, we had that. Like, Kingdom 5 was known as the War Kingdom. So in that kingdom, all they did was just PvP all day, every day, dude. It was a battle royale 24/7 like 7-Eleven. and what's funny is, dude, they marketed themselves this way. Like, they would promote in recruitment, and they would say, look, you want to come and test your battle in the best war server around where all we do is fight nonstop? Yeah. And people would go there.
It makes sense because I like it because it's a very WoW philosophy again. Because in WoW, if everyone's played World of Warcraft, in all the servers are split up like that. You have servers dedicated to PvE content only, so you can just go through PvE. There's PvEVP, which is the same where you can do all of it, and then there's literally a pure PvP world where no matter where you are able to be killed. And
Yeah.
there's even role playing, servers. There's all these different type of servers allowed, and each of them have their own, population, and they all live, the way they do. So it'd be cool if CoD did again something like that, and like as you say, like an IK. It's a cool concept because then you can have like, this is server is for this, and then you go there when you event. Obviously the migration system at the moment doesn't work for that because obviously the current migration system's designed so you can migrate to the guys you currently fight against, and in case maybe you haven't been getting on with your current server, and then you found some new friends in a new server, it allows you to keep playing.
So check this out. The easiest way to do migration is this. You allow for players to go anywhere they want to go to. Absolutely no restrictions as far as on server age, but you just make it autonomous. You make it so that way the king or queen can control and set the power cap, right? If you do it that way, it doesn't matter at that point because that kingdom is taking the risk based on who they accept or who they deny. So if you think about it, the age of a server at that point doesn't matter. Right now,
it's the responsibility of the
exactly, they're accountable for that. And then before they go in, and then you think about it. Okay, well then the question becomes, okay, well what happens, boss, if a group goes into a brand new kingdom and then they just want to bring in all their mains and wreck face? Well, here's the answer for that. You do some type of elo rating system, very similar to what they were doing in Rock, where you put the kingdoms up against the other kingdoms that would be the top 5 kingdoms in the game, and the number 6 through 10. I mean, the point is there's ways to mitigate that, where you can create the most simplistic system ever when it comes to migration without having to have all these hoops that you have to jump through or these rules. I mean, look at how crazy Rock migration is, right? How many people do we know, or do you think have a perfect understanding of how to do Rock migration for every season until you get to Season of Conquest? Like, probably not everyone, because it's just very convoluted. But if you tone it down and strip it away, and you say, look, anyone can go anywhere. We'll have a king, or we'll have something in place where someone can set whatever the cap is for when the migration window opens, right? Whether it's a king or queen type system, if it's all these alliances fighting over for control of it, right? Whatever it may be. But then you make it so they can set it. So if they want to accept someone as a brand new kingdom that's stronger than anyone else there, and they don't know that person, that's the risk they're going to take. And that should be and they should be accountable for that. Treating your kingdom as though it is a kingdom, right? Regardless of who's running. You can have kingdoms where you have multiple factions. I mean, geez, just look at Game of Thrones as a prime example. You got a kingdom, but you got multiple factions that are within your continent. And at times within your actual kingdom or the country itself. So, I don't know. My view on it is like let's do a less is more. Let's work smarter, not harder. Because right now, you're almost having to work a little harder because you don't know these things and you don't know who's going to come into your kingdom and you don't know what their intentions are. But if you have some type of a vetting process, you can at least mitigate some of that. So, anyways, again, that's my view on it. That's how I'd like to see it, but I understand where they're at right now. They're trying to have it be fair for everyone and probably not trying to put a lot of restrictions on it like we're seeing now. I just think that can be really detrimental.
Yeah, no, I get you. I would like it, because like I say, I'm not gonna lie, I'd like themed servers. I do think themed servers is kind of like, weirdly, a good thing. That's why even anyone coming from any sort of background, even a shooter, some people used to play Battlefield 2. Call of Duty 4,
BF2?
World at War. You guys know the best thing that was in those games were server list. And now server list doesn't exist. It's all about hit, find, match, and we will put you in the right game. And it's like, but like, I'd love some sort of servers, obviously kingdoms that are all their own unique, maybe a personalities. Because I can imagine it, man. And I was speaking to one of my best mates who's playing the game. about it. I was like, hey, could you imagine just like a kingdom after like say a year or two of playing, and they were mellowed out, but the whole kingdom's premise was just mercenaries to hire. So the whole server would
Yeah.
go into a division, and you're against three other servers, but one of the servers knows your mercenaries to hire. So they're like, do you know what? We're gonna pay your alliance, main alliances, this amount of resource per week to fight on our behalf. And then you're like, yeah, all right, then we're gonna fight on your behalf, and you just play the role playing game of a mercenary, dude.
That's
I'd
so
love
funny.
to see that.
Yeah, yeah, where they're like weekly maxing you out at
Oh, I'd
your
love
weekly
it. I'd
cap.
be like, yeah,
Yeah,
man, you pay for my hospital bill, and I will fight for you all day,
that's
son.
funny.
Like,
Yeah,
I would love to see that type of stuff. But yeah, it's obviously DreamWorks and that, but it would
yeah,
be very fun to see for the game. I would hope in the
no,
future.
no, for sure. I mean, even if what would be really cool is if they even allowed for kingdoms to choose, like where you could lock it in. Like so, like they gave you like they gave you just the KVK group shell, and then kingdoms could coordinate and say, all right, hey, we want to fight you guys in KVK. So then they load up into this group, and then another kingdom loads up into the group. And kingdoms could even choose which other kingdoms they want to go and fight against. And then you see the
Oh,
historical record there, and you could see, okay, well, which kingdoms are... Because you have to think about it. That would tell a lot about your kingdom if you're taking the hard road or the easy road, right? Especially
yeah,
depending on what you're doing. And I'm just saying, generally speaking, that would be cool if something like that could happen. Because in Rock, there is some type of thing where you can almost kind of do something like that, where you guys kind of go into the same, I believe it's like season story mode, or which season, like KVK season you want to go into for its storyline. But if you have the opportunity to literally go in and say, we're Kingdom 70, we want to match up with these other kingdoms, you do something where maybe you create like a private group or something like that. And then once you get 5 kingdoms or 6 kingdoms or whatever, then like you have a time window, right? Obviously, if it has to stay on
yeah.
pace with what the game's back end is on. But then let's say you're given 3 days to basically get a KVK group together. You could have kingdoms that say, look, we 5 want to go in and fight each other, and just have like an all-out war. Or as another example, you could do the same thing, but you could have kingdoms say, look, we're going to do it no rush style, right? We're talking like back traditional RTS stuff. We're going to say, we're not going to fight anyone in zone 1, no one in zone 2, everyone's going to build. We'll have equal splits all the way to zone 3. Once everyone connects to the dragon, then we're going to have all-out war in zone 3. We'll have...
See who disconnects.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, just,
Yeah.
yeah, like, we'll have all out wars. Like, but the point is, you give everyone the opportunity to build all the way, and then you do the big fight, and you say, we're going to do all out war in zone 3, and until there's only one alliance left or something like that, that still has territory in zone 3. And if you lose all your territory from your gate or something like that, then you're out. You have to wait until the fight finishes. You could even do something where you say, zone 1 is safe. Once everyone connects to zone 3, then it's an all-out fight all the way through zone 2. Like, I mean, the point is you can do things like that. If you have like-minded kingdoms and people that are running those, whoever it is, if it's one alliance or a group, you could do those types of fun things. And, but anyways, I'm kind of going off on my, enjoyable long-term wishful tangents here at this point, but I think we've kind of beaten the horse, if we will. I think we're coming up to about an hour. Unless there was something else maybe you wanted to add in.
No, I think
Okay.
we've covered everything. I hope everyone's enjoyed the episode.
All right. Awesome. Well, that's going to be it for us, guys. This is the COD Pod Episode 8 with myself and Mr. Sneaky. Sneak, why don't you go ahead and tell the boys and gals out there in the world where they can find you, what you got coming up next, and then I'll close this out.
Yeah, so you can catch me out on YouTube, Mr. Sneaker, obviously, as the overlay show for both of us. Also, I'm live streaming now, so I'm going to be trying to live stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which is a nice little schedule. And upcoming content-wise, to be fair, a lot of people have been asking, and it's very draining, and you'll probably get the same questions, but it's like, which commander is better with what commander? Well, there's a 4-part series coming out for each of the unit types, so if you're wanting to learn about mages, archers, cavalry, infantry, I'm going to tell you from start to finish how to pair your commanders and work with what you've got all the way through. So that's what I've got coming up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks for having me. Or say thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone. But until the next one, I'll pass it back to you.
I'm good. All right, man. No, love it. That is, I'm sure it's going to be a hot one. For me, as always, you guys can find me at @BossNasty. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I'm pretty simple. So I got one thing right now, and that's what I'm sticking with. So it's the old man maneuvers, if you will. As always, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Can't wait for more to come. Hopefully, we might even have a chance to get some more guests coming on in the future. But otherwise, it's always a pleasure, Sneak. And to everyone out there, again, hope you guys enjoyed. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, until next time, we will catch you later.